So, Final Fantasy 16 reveal trailer. I am excited, guys. You know, I'm a huge JRPG guy in these games, right? Persona, Final Fantasy, right? Curse of Mana, right? That was a very emotional message for me. Just right when this game was out, that was like the reaction. I mean, it's the trailer. I was like, oh my god, I can finally see. You know, for me actually, this game was bigger for me, Curse of Mana, I would say, than actually FF7 Remake, right? This year, because I mean, I expected FF7 to come one day. I didn't work at the game, right? Expected it to come one day because I worked at FF7 Remake, a few years ago. So. Curse of Mana was a bigger thing. Same here though, I mean I'm excited, but obviously I also expected 16 to be more and more trailers coming eventually, right? But anyway, I'm a huge JRPG guy, right? I even wrote my thesis on the JRPG combat system. So I have a paper published and a little book, I guess, on JRPG, so it's been crazy. And I've been collecting games for years, right? I have almost every title, right? More or less, from like Super Nintendo to now. You know, everything from Suikoden, Breath of Fire, right? So on. Not just of course Final Fantasy, but Final Fantasy is always the biggest thing. Final Fantasy was the biggest hitter, and this is clearly Shiva. I suppose looks a little different than usually does, but you know, Shiva with more clothing. Yeah. So anyway, yeah, I'm excited to see what's happening. I want to guess before we start that I think the combat. I heard some rumors. The combat is probably gonna be, I don't know, Dark Souls, Devil May Cry. I heard something like that. And then the combat is moving more and more real time, right? The old games, of course, more than turn-based. 10 was turn-based, but people are like, oh, no. The older games used to be ATB, right? It was active and so on. 13 was my favorite, probably, actually, still. 12 is a good combat system too, but I think in 13 they really nailed it. Yeah, I think that 13 had the best combat system. But I think this game here is going to be more roaming, more free, probably. That's my guess. Anyway, let's start watching it. Here we go, yes. I haven't seen it before, right? It's my first time seeing it. Yeah, fire burning, okay. Looks a little more high fantasy. Okay, it's just Shiva, okay, yeah, Shiva. Still a little boy, yeah, I don't know, still not like pretty boy band, but still some pretty, I mean, here Final Fantasy Chocobo Knights kind of thing, okay, interesting. Yeah, screens. Was that Behemoth? No, it's title maybe. Okay. That's clear Shiva right there with ice power, clearly. They mentioned it earlier. This is like the Titan though from FF7 and so on. We're gonna review, of course. Okay, this is the main. This pretty boy is the main character, and here of course he's turning the main. Yeah, the classic main team here. Yeah, I guess the Goosebumps, of course, getting the classic main team, right? Yeah, the new version of the classic fantasy main team. This looks so much more fantasy, definitely, usually. You know, old school fantasy, right? Medieval fantasy, more than the heavy combat system. Okay, yeah, so is it only one character? Seems to be... Malboro, okay, clearly. Bad Breath, yeah. He even showed out different predators, right? You can dodge them and so on, yeah. So he's definitely much more... Who's this lady? Some hot classic lady there, yeah. Some Odio-sama lady, yeah. It's like, yeah, definitely. Certainly. Odin maybe? Nah, probably it's an enemy, yeah, I don't know. There's so many kind of phoenix... It's kind of like Judge appears in that guy. If Evil Eyes Judge more in that sense, right? Oh, some red wedding betrayal. Okay, yeah. I mean, it definitely feels a lot more like that. Yeah, it's okay. Some betrayal. It's some medieval pact system, and you betrayed our family, and yeah. Ifrit, perhaps, maybe, I don't know. It's a phoenix more than an Ifrit, though, but some fire there. That gave me some Sega Fountain 2 vibe though, like his brother is dying and a firebrand appears. Yeah, this gives me a little Sega Fountain 2 vibe, definitely. That is an Ifrit though. Yeah, this is definitely Ifrit. Maybe Bahamut, think about it. No, it's Ifrit. First attack corner! Crystals, of course, are important. So they have both like a Fire Phoenix and Ifrit? That's a surprise to me, yeah. So 2 fire summonings? I mean, Chief, of course, the ice. But I mean, it's certainly going to have Bahamut and so on eventually as well. So he's screaming "Wake up!" So I think that his brother, I suppose his brother, or some kind of close friend. I think his brother is the one turning into Ifrit. That's my guess, given what happened there. Maybe it's more than one playbook. I don't see age there. But yeah, that Phoenix is in the promotional art. Yeah. So, and Ifrit is the other thing. Okay, I see. Yeah, let's talk about it. Let's break it down. Let's review it, right? Definitely feels very more fantasy, guys. I mean, clearly, this feels more Game of Thrones, right? Than if you look at older, use FF7, right? For example, FF7 Remake, right? Whatever, FF7 Remake. But FF7, right? FF8 for them and so on, right? They are more futuristic, right? You have some sci-fi elements, you have a train, of course, and so on, right? You have airplanes and, yada yada, right? And it's more tech and it's elevators and so on, right? And FF9 is more old school. It's more FF9 is more this, right? Yeah, it's more medieval. It's more at the back, like that, right? FF10, of course, is like a mixture of it. The Age of Civilization. And FF12 is also a little more medieval, but maybe I guess more or different areas of roughly Dark Ages time, right? Yeah. And 13 is definitely a lot more futuristic. Yeah, they believe in the moon and so on. And so on. The 15 as well is kind of like almost present time, right? Yeah, with the car and so on. So this game again, right? We're going from the future to the past. I think some people definitely, a lot of people are right. Oh my God, it's actually fantasy now, yada yada. But if you look at FF1, 2, 1, 2, 3, 4, even up to arguably 6, I'll say 1 to 5. They are more, medieval, right? Yeah, and then 9 is a mansion, for example, is medieval. So I don't think that's... Actually, I think that the whole futuristic Final Fantasy is probably started with 7, I would say, mainly. Even though the few of the 6 had some of it, but especially 7 is when it really knocked out into future. But Source 6 had steampunk and they had, mechas and so on. So it wasn't, not only that. But 7 was really futuristic, right? Compared to the previous ones. And 6 was, kind of in between. Yeah, 6 like a mixture. But whatever. Professor history aside, this game here is clearly a lot more old school, classic fantasy, right? With knights and some betrayal. Oh, you promised to, help us with this war and so on. So it seems more like that, right? I don't know. Is it better? Is it worse? Let's see. I think one thing, and as I was saying this thing, I love, most of the fantasy games, right? Most of them. And I can't think all the games, not just the main series, but all this Dissidia and so on, yeah. I like all of them, but it's some of them, how would I say it? I think that I personally probably prefer being more futuristic, because I think that makes fantasy, same with the Fantasy Star, right? It makes it feel a little more Japanese to me, a little more anime, I suppose, if you're gonna be anime. I think so, more than, because I feel this thing here, and I think a lot of people are probably gonna be reacting to saying that, oh, it's so high fantasy now, oh, it's so, because I feel we have so many other games looking kind of like this side from other developers. That's probably my main thing. The game, the theme of the game and the effort of the game is probably gonna stand out less, right, than compared to if it was yet another, futuristic, a little more actions-packed, more anime in that sense, but still, down to earth. Whatever. I leave it aside, but I'm saying that it definitely is another back to the medieval time compared to the previous games, right? The current, the closest games. So the first thing, clearly, right, the premise is different in that sense. Otherwise, the combat system is the biggest thing. Let's take a look at the image of that. Wesley, first, I'll say this thing here before I forget it. The Ifrit guy is his brother, right? Whatever that is. I mean, it's a kid, right? And the kid is like, oh, Nisha, I don't know, but it's his brother. And I think why you see the fighting in the Phoenix versus the Ifrit in the actual promo art thing, right, is probably right because, of course, he is the Phoenix, right, the main character. And this is his younger brother, I think, that is Ifrit, and he lost his the controller rights. So they're like, get a hold of yourself, so he has to kill his brother or something like that. So I think that's the reason why you see, the Ifrit. By the way, let's go to the combat gameplay. I think it's probably the biggest change. Of course, Marlboro, bad breath, right? And I think this image here, or this scene here, is the most clear image, where it looks very much more like an action RPG, right? Or it's an action game, I have Neo here in front of me. It looks more like, it feels more like Neo 1 and 2, whatever, right? Or Sekiro, or, you name it, right? Dark Souls, of course, I think people can compare it to. Is because you can dodge the projectiles here. So if you play FF7 remake, it also is you're moving around and so on. FF15 as well for the matter, right? But in FF15, you could barely dodge anything. It was kind of like you could move around by teleporting, and that kind of made you dodge stuff, but. You didn't have the roll button. You didn't have the Dark Souls roll button. You can actually have it, but like, not in the same way, right? You didn't really have like dodge. It wasn't like that. And 7 remake, you could barely dodge anything, honestly, right? In that you can, some bosses are kind of like Leviathan, kind of flies at you can go to the side, but it isn't really like the most projectile, like a fire attack or something, like a fireball. It kind of hits you in your face, and you can avoid that. But sure, FF7 Remake has some moments like we can avoid the water coming down and so on. So I'm not saying it doesn't have that, but here, in my take at least from watching the trailer, right, is that this seems a lot more like that, right? Like it's spitting out the bad breath, right? It's flying several projectiles out from you, so you have to dodge them. This is a lot more action packed, right? You actually have to zigzag between the different projectiles. In my opinion, at least, for go to the reaction here, that's my initial take on it. I think it's a lot more dodge, more mobility. Yeah, I mean, FF7 remake example, closest latest FF7 game, you move a lot, right? Because you can bam, bam, bam with Tifa, which is the best character, obviously. Bam, bam, bam in the combo, right? But you don't really dodge that much. You can just keep punching them and keep healing and so on. This seems a lot more like, okay, I'm gonna avoid, which is probably, of course, when I say now, why? You only play one character, right? Yeah, you see, only playing one character. So because you're only playing one character, and I read that I think Devil May Cry developers is involved, right, some director there, yeah, because it's more, again, right, like Devil May Cry when you're playing as Dante or whatever, right, or Virgil and so on, it's one character, yeah, one character. So, of course, dodging and so on is more important, because I guess you heal with maybe some items or something, right, you don't have that many. You probably don't have healing. You might have healing spells, right, maybe, right, but you know what I mean, like it's not really that kind of management. Looking at the older games where you can never dodge anything, FF, let's say 6 or 7 or whatever, right? You can never dodge anything, so it's much more about, okay, hey, I have to protect myself, I have to heal, here I have to use reflect and so on, right? 7 Remake has a mix of that. You could avoid some things. Sometimes you have to use, barrier and shell to survive, right? It's like a mixture of that. It might still be here, but it feels this game is more like you can probably avoid everything. Right? But anyway, the game clearly looks a lot more action-packed. There's all the screens here. Yeah, right, and yeah, I mean, it's so kind of like, lightning, blazing, fast-beating, probably with the Phoenix thing, that's a kind of, yeah, so it seems a lot more action-packed. Might be some, movement ability, some, I don't know, teleport attack, blazing, speeding, right? So yeah, a lot more like that, and I don't know, honestly. I'm gonna say this thing, right? To be honest here. The game might be really good. Like, I'm not saying the game is going to be bad. I'm saying it might be a really good game, right? But I have to say this thing to be true, honestly. Right? It doesn't look very Final Fantasy to me with the combat system, right? Because I think Final Fantasy, even in 15, with the boy band, it was, especially the boy band, was a lot about the party, right? But what I mean is that in 12 you needed control over 2 characters. You had like gambits, right? You could control them, but they were out to be controlled depending on how you coded them, right? And in 13 you control everything. You soft with your shifts, right? So you kind of control them, So basically they're battle party commando games, right? As they're called. And in 15, likewise, right? You had 3 other characters, and they were. But I think in 15, though, you didn't have that much control over them. Like compared to 13, you really had a lot of control what they were doing, because you change the roles, right? But still, though, you have some, basic, menu control over the other characters, right? But in this game here, maybe it's because it's a trailer, but I don't think so, right? It seems to be the first Final Fantasy main game we're only playing one character. And that is a huge difference. There's a huge difference, yeah. It's the first Final Fantasy game, unless of course you get more characters. This is the beginning of the game, but I very much doubt they will have this as a trailer. So it really seems to be the first mainstay game again in Final Fantasy where you only have one character, right? And that is a huge difference, because it really removes all the party, right? I don't know how it's going to be with the storyline, because you won't have any party members, you won't have that relationship between different characters, so all right. But I mean, yeah, but still though, I think the biggest thing for me is that it's probably less strategic, the game, right? It is less about your you know, how do I combine these different characters? Who's gonna have the heal? Who's gonna be the tank? You know, different roles. Who's gonna do what? Who's gonna do this thing? On this boss, everyone has to be really tanky. So we're gonna have 3 tanks and 1 healer, and you know, and that kind of stuff right there. That seems to be all be avoided here, right? And it's just about, you know, fighting. Like, and again, like I like the Devil May Cry. I have the game somewhere, I think it's around here. Like I love Separate Devil May Cry 5. One of the best game last year, right? It was an amazing game. I love Sekiro. That's one of my second favorite after Fire Emblem, which is my probably favorite game last year. But yeah, Sekiro probably my number 2 last year. So I'm not saying I dislike those games, or to the contrary. But the thing is that, so I sound negative, but yeah, it's like, I mean, this game might be amazing, but I'm just saying that, is this what Final Fantasy is supposed to be? I'm really confused, to be honest. Right? Because yeah, Final Fantasy for me is more strategic, right? It's not turn-based, it's a real-time, you know, strategic game, but it's like, you have your characters, you have to decide if options, and then the bosses are fire breath, you have to protect that, heal that, and so on. And it's more about the builds, right, and the talent trees, or the grid nets, or not talent trees, but you know what I mean, grid net, or flower paths, whatever you have, right? But basically, I think there's a little more with the game, right? So, yeah, this feels very, very different. That I say, it's very, very different. Let's look at some of the other scenes here. So as I mentioned earlier, right, the game clearly looks a lot more medieval time, Dark Ages, there's more the characters. It feels very not Japanese. I'm sitting here behind with my hibiki and yeah, my senpai and so on. No, but it feels very Japanese, because in 15, yes, it was more like, you know, it was less, to lack of better words, it was less anime, but you had, everyone was like the boy bands. Everyone was like the pretty boy, you know, Bishonen. It was very Japanese, right? And of course 13 and so on. Before that, they were all very, very typical JRPG style, right? So yeah, this game definitely feels, the clothing, this feels typical like medieval time, quite, you know, maybe 12th, 13th century Europe, right? Based on things like, you know, cross there and the red and white. Yeah, it feels very, I wouldn't say historically accurate, but the clothing looks quite historic accurate. Like they're trying to be, you know, somewhat real here with the clothing and so on. So yeah, I don't know. I mean, leave a comment on what you think, guys. I'm a little, it feels like they're taking a huge step from what they used to do. Because if you look at like FF9, for example, right, that's also somewhat like medieval time, and then they have flying ship, but it's like, you know, half-ass medieval time to some extent. But yeah, like people are still dressed in, you know, crazy barbarian clothing and so on. So, but it also could be that this is the first trailer, the first kind of official trailer. And you know, when we get on, you might see different, you know, chocobos and Moog and so on. But that's more than that. Yeah, we had chocobos, but I mean, already gonna have, you know, black mages and so on. It feels less whimsical fantasy. So good for it, I think. Yeah, this feels less whimsical. It looks more very realistic, right? In that sense. So it's a huge differential, I feel, this game. Everything I see, both from a visual standpoint, it's on a single player, but it's one character, I guess, right? One party member. Much more action pass, much more, you know, dodging and avoiding stuff. And yeah, and all the character looks a lot more like, you know, oh, like they're, I don't know, in some European video game, I guess, more than, you know what I mean? Yeah, in more than a Japanese game. So it really feels very, very different. In that sense, I'm excited to see more, though. I'm excited to see where they go from it. But also this thing, not to be negative here. The combat system, I don't think they're showing enough of it to really be able to judge it here, in my opinion. But it's probably pretty good, though. Yeah, it's probably pretty good. I must say it's bad. The combat system, what we saw, looked pretty slick, right? High speed movement. It looked pretty good with the Phoenix summoning. I guess that's like his animal. So maybe you're going to have more kind of like his brother probably has the Ifrit, as I mentioned, right? So maybe Shiva is probably another female character, right? So you might be that you have different characters, you can swap them. You might be that you have different, you know, female party, you can like swap them current battle maybe. Like the female character could be the Shiva controller, Shiva party member, right? Yeah, something like that is my guess probably. So it doesn't have to be just have one guy and so on. So I'm intrigued. I would say this. I'm very intrigued. I'm like, what are they doing? Yeah, I'm like, what is happening? I'm very intrigued to see what's happening. But as I said, I think it's gonna be. I think it's gonna be a good game. But it doesn't necessarily feel very Final Fantasy. Yeah, like it's a strange feeling. Look at this thing. I don't know how long review reaction here now, but it does definitely to me feels I'm a little perplexed, right? I'm perplexed and intrigued. I'm like, it is Final Fantasy VI. If you haven't told me, if it wasn't like, any, name on it, I'll be like, oh, this is another, it could be a cool game, yeah. But now, because I'm like, I'm comparing it to previous Square Enix Fantasy game, I'm just like, interesting. They seem to be going very far away from what they usually do, yeah. So I feel like I'm reviewing it more like what I'm guessing is gonna be compared to what I'm used to, right? And not really necessarily if it's good or bad, just like how is it from the normal game, right? So I'm a little bit like, a little bit like that, yeah, a little bit like that. But I'm honest with you. It's always what I do myself. I'm always honest. If something is bad, I say it's bad, right? And here, to just say it again here, I'm not saying this is bad. I just don't know. Yeah, I'm saying that this is not what I'm used to, right? And again, I will stand by saying that you won't find a bigger JRPG expert than me. Like, I am the king of JRPGs. Like, trust me, I can paid for JRPGs. I know my freaking JRPG. And this is nothing like Fantasy 1 to 15 at all. Almost. This is kind of how it feels, yeah. Like, from like a very surface level, but having played the game, doesn't feel similar at all. But maybe it is. Maybe the combat system has. Maybe you have the ATB. Maybe you have some kind of meter, right? Maybe you can't attack stuff. But that, I don't think so, right? Because the game seems to show you fighting and not dodging. So it'd be kind of strange if you have some kind of meter like an S7 where you have to wait until you can attack and so on. And people can say that's better or worse, right? But I'm just saying that it's two different games, right? Like, it's, because FF7 Remake combat was amazing, yeah. The combat FF7 Remake was really, really good. When you fought around, right? Got the meter up. I still say I prefer 13 though, in my opinion though, because I think they had better strategy and also was much harder. So I think 13 was better combat system. But 7 Remake was really good too. And it was like a mixture of, I would say, 15 and 13, right? It was like the middle part. It was like the meeting of those two games was 7 Remake. And I really love the combat system. It was really, really good. And another combat system was good too, of course. It's 12, right? It was similar to that. But this here, without having party members, yeah, it's just, it's going to be a very different game, right? Unless, of course, you can change character. You can swap into, as I mentioned, you can swap into like the Ramu, Odin character or something, and you have some other stuff, and maybe you have NPCs running around with you. And I hate that AI NPC thing, but the fantasy usually has a kind of control over them, right? So you have like, you can swap characters and so on. I don't know. I don't know what, yeah. This also, because one thing I will say here is that this feels like it's very early in the game, right? That's why I'm a little unsure here. Because I will say it again here as like a little, framing what I'm saying here, right? Is that everything we see here now, to me at least, feels like it's the first hour or two of the game, right? Maybe not the combat, but the storyline at least, with this Ifrit and so on, that seems to be probably the first thing happening. There is some betrayal, like it's probably very, very early in the game. So, but still, if you have more playable characters and, some hot chicks and so on, his girlfriend or whatever, they probably will show that. So, yeah. I'm perplexed. I'm intrigued, but I'm perplexed at the same time. That's the, Final Fantasy 16 reaction, review, and so on. Long video, longer than I planned to. And it is because I'm not saying that I'm not disappointed either. I'm just confused. Yeah, I'm just like, is this good or bad? I'm like, I don't know. It's just so different. Yeah, I'm just like, interesting. That's probably like, yeah, it's interesting. Not what I expected, So it's just hard to judge it because you're like, will I like this game? Maybe I will. And I'll say one thing, last sentence here. Let's comment again. I would probably be, if no one told me this was a fantasy at all, like you didn't have the title, right, and you just released this game, it might be a great game, right? But now you're so much comparing it because you're like, what is this thing? So it's like a weird feeling because of that reason, because you're like, I feel they're doing something else, and then you smack the title on it. I don't know. The only thing that feels Final Fantasy is Chocobo, and also Ifrit and Shiva and so on. They're there, but yeah, like they were there, I guess. Like the characters, you recognize those things, yeah. And nothing else. Well, the main character is a pretty boy, I suppose. That's good. He's Bishon, that's good. But anyways, that's the guys. Subscribe button, press the like button, right? There was more reaction this week, right? Getting into the anime ending. And so new into next season. And some more good stuff, right? We're gonna do a longer live stream, talking about all new shows and so on. It's interesting. Anyway, see you guys and have a great day.